Darius Hamilton was a man whose very name was synonymous with power, wealth, and influence. The son of a self-made real estate mogul, Darius had grown up in a world of privilege, knowing nothing of struggle or hardship. By the time he took over his father's company, Hamilton Enterprises, he had already earned a reputation as a ruthless businessman. His office, perched atop a high-rise in downtown Manhattan, overlooked the city he believed was his to conquer. With his chiseled jawline, perfectly tailored suits, and the charm of a seasoned politician, Darius was accustomed to getting his way. Women were drawn to him like moths to a flame, captivated by his allure and blinded by the promises of luxury that came with his attention. But Darius's heart was a barren landscape, hardened by years of ambition and the belief that money could solve any problem. One morning, a young woman named Leah Thompson walked into his office as a new hire. Leah was smart, determined, and full of dreams that stretched far beyond the confines of her secretarial position. She had grown up in a struggling single-parent household in Brooklyn, where every day was a battle against the tide of poverty. Leah had clawed her way through college on scholarships and part-time jobs, determined to carve out a better life for herself. The moment Leah met Darius, she knew he was trouble. There was something about the way he looked at her, like she was both a challenge and a conquest. Darius, on the other hand, was captivated by Leah's confidence and grace. It wasn't long before late nights at the office turned into dinners, and dinners turned into something more. Leah knew she was playing with fire, but the thrill of being with a man like Darius was intoxicating. She believed, perhaps foolishly, that she could be the one to change him. But Darius had no intentions of changing. When Leah found out she was pregnant, she was terrified but also strangely hopeful. She imagined a future where their child could bridge the gap between their worlds, where Darius would soften, and they could build a family together. But when she told him the news, his response was colder than she could have ever imagined. "I can't have this getting out," Darius said, his voice devoid of emotion. "It would ruin everything I've built." Leah's heart sank. "Darius, this isn't just about you. This is our child." Darius's gaze hardened. "It's a mistake that needs to be fixed. You need to get rid of it." Leah was stunned. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. When she refused, Darius's demeanor shifted from cold to cruel. He fired her the next day, using a flimsy excuse of poor performance. Leah was left alone, jobless and pregnant, with no one to turn to. Darius moved on with his life as if nothing had happened, burying the incident deep within his conscience. Leah, however, was left to pick up the pieces. She gave birth to a baby boy she named Marcus, vowing to raise him with the love and dignity that Darius had denied them. She struggled through odd jobs, late nights, and countless sacrifices, but Leah never gave up on her son. Marcus grew up knowing the hardships of life, but also the strength of his mother's love. Marcus Hamilton Thompson had always known he was different. Growing up in the tougher parts of Brooklyn, he was constantly reminded of his mother's struggle and the absence of his father. Leah never hid the truth from him, telling him that his father was a wealthy man who had chosen power over responsibility, money over family. Marcus grew up with a chip on his shoulder, determined to prove that he was more than the product of his father's abandonment. He excelled in school, fueled by the need to escape his circumstances and make his mother proud. Marcus was bright, driven, and charismatic, qualities that earned him a full scholarship to an Ivy League university. There, he studied business and finance, always with one goal in mind: to confront the man who had dismissed his mother and his existence. As Marcus delved deeper into the world of business, he became a rising star in his own right. He founded his own tech startup that took off almost overnight, earning him recognition as one of the most promising young entrepreneurs of his generation. But behind every success was the burning desire to settle a score. Marcus was not just building a company. He was building an empire that would one day rival his father's. For years, Marcus followed his father's career from a distance. He watched Darius Hamilton climb to greater heights, expanding his business, buying luxury properties, and living the life of a man who believed he was untouchable. But Darius's reputation had darkened over the years. There were whispers of shady business deals, mistreatment of employees, and more than a few broken hearts left in his wake. Yet, no one dared challenge him, until now. The day Marcus had been waiting for finally arrived. Armed with an impressive resume and his sharp intellect, he secured a meeting at Hamilton Enterprises under the guise of a potential investor. As Marcus entered the towering glass building, he couldn't help but feel the weight of his mother's struggles and sacrifices pressing down on him. The office was a pristine palace of power, filled with the kind of wealth that had always seemed like a distant dream in his childhood. Darius Hamilton's office was exactly as Marcus had imagined, luxurious, cold, and devoid of any sign of warmth or humanity. Darius sat behind a massive mahogany desk, his expression the perfect blend of arrogance and indifference. He glanced up as Marcus entered, his eyes briefly narrowing as if trying to place the face before him. "Mr. Hamilton, thank you for meeting with me," Marcus said, extending his hand. Darius shook it briefly, his grip firm but detached. "I hear you've got a promising business. I'm always interested in meeting the next generation of leaders." Marcus sat down, his heart pounding in his chest. He had rehearsed this moment in his mind 1,000 times, but now that he was here, face to face with the man who had caused so much pain, it was hard to keep his emotions in check. "Thank you. I've been following your career for a long time," Marcus began, his voice steady. "In fact, I'd say I know more about you than most." Darius leaned back in his chair, intrigued. "Is that so? Well, I've been in the game a long time. It's not often I hear someone say that." Marcus smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "You could say it's personal." Darius's brow furrowed. "Personal? I don't think we've met before." Marcus's eyes locked onto Darius's, his voice filled with a quiet intensity. "No, we haven't. But you've met my mother, Leah Thompson." The name hung in the air like a bomb. For a moment, Darius's confident facade cracked. He quickly recovered, but Marcus could see the flicker of recognition in his eyes. "I'm sorry, but I meet a lot of people," Darius said, though his tone was strained. Marcus leaned forward, his voice sharp. "You fired her 24 years ago after she told you she was pregnant. You left her to raise me alone, without a cent of your wealth or even an ounce of your decency." Darius stiffened, his expression shifting from confusion to irritation. "I don't know what you think you're doing, but this is not the place for." "You don't remember, do you?" Marcus cut him off. "Or maybe you just chose to forget. But my mother never forgot. She never forgot the man who promised her the world and then ripped it away when she needed him most." Darius's face hardened. "I've built this company on my own terms. I don't owe anyone anything." Marcus's anger flared. "Not even your own son? Not even the woman who sacrificed everything for me while you lived your life like we never existed?" Darius stood up, towering over Marcus with a mix of anger and discomfort. "You think you can come in here and make demands? This is my company, my world." Marcus stood as well, meeting his father's glare with one of his own. "I'm not here to make demands, Darius. I'm here to show you that you can't run from the past forever. You might be powerful, but you're not untouchable." The tension in the room was palpable. Darius was used to being in control, but for the first time in his life, he was caught off guard. The son he had never acknowledged was standing before him, not as a broken young man, but as an equal, a force to be reckoned with. "What do you want?" Darius finally asked, his voice laced with frustration. "Is this about money?" Marcus shook his head, his gaze unwavering. "It was never about the money. It's about accountability. It's about facing what you did." Darius scoffed. "I did what I had to do. I was protecting my legacy." Marcus's eyes burned with anger. "Your legacy? You think your money and your buildings will outlast the pain you caused? You built your empire on broken promises and shattered lives." Darius opened his mouth to retort, but Marcus continued. "I've read about you, Darius. I know the deals you've made, the people you've crushed to get ahead. But what you did to my mother, that was personal, and you can't buy your way out of it." Darius's face was red with fury. "You don't know anything about what it takes to run a business like this. You think you can come in here and lecture me?" Marcus took a deep breath, his voice calm but unyielding. "I'm not here to lecture you. I'm here to remind you that some things are more important than money. My mother taught me that. She taught me to be better than the man you are." Darius was silent, the weight of Marcus's words hanging heavily in the room. For the first time, he saw himself not as the powerful mogul, but as a man whose actions had consequences. "You don't have to admit what you did," Marcus said finally. "You don't even have to apologize. But you will remember me. And you'll remember the woman you tried to forget." Marcus turned to leave, his back straight and his steps confident. Darius watched him go, the door closing behind him with a finality that echoed through the room. For the first time in his life, Darius Hamilton felt small. Darius sat alone in his office, staring at the city that had once felt like his kingdom. He thought about all the things he had sacrificed in the name of success, his integrity, his decency, and now, the chance to be a father to the son he never knew. He tried to push the thoughts away, but they lingered like ghosts. Darius pulled open his desk drawer and took out an old photograph, one he hadn't looked at in years. It was of Leah, smiling, full of hope and promise. It was a reminder of what he had lost, not because of circumstances, but because of his choices. For the first time in a long time, Darius felt a pang of regret. He picked up his phone and stared at the screen, considering calling Leah, reaching out, apologizing, or even just acknowledging the past. But he couldn't bring himself to do it. Not yet. Marcus had given him a lot to think about. He had built an empire, but at what cost? He had wealth and power, but his legacy was stained by the people he had hurt along the way. Darius knew that no amount of money could fix what was broken, but perhaps there was still time to make amends. He looked out at the city, the sun setting behind the skyscrapers, casting long shadows across the office. Darius Hamilton was not a man accustomed to introspection, but today was different. Today, he had been forced to confront the truth. And for the first time, he wondered if it was too late to change. Marcus, on the other hand, walked away from Hamilton Enterprises feeling lighter than he had in years. He had faced his father, not for revenge, but for closure. He knew that the path ahead would not be easy, but he was no longer haunted by the man who had abandoned him. Marcus had his own future to build, one that was not defined by Darius Hamilton's mistakes. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Marcus called his mother, his voice filled with a newfound sense of purpose. "Mom, it's done. I finally faced him." Leah's voice on the other end was warm and full of pride. "I knew you would, Marcus, and I'm so proud of you." They talked long into the evening, sharing memories and dreams, reconnecting as mother and son.